Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Thursday, March 27th, 2025 at 2:02 in the afternoon. We're back from roll call vote and back to continued discussions on draft 3.H42. I think when we left, Representative Cooper had a question.
Yes. My question pertained to, I think a little bit earlier in the bill, pull that up, in which we are, I think, at page 8, line 4 or 5. And my question was whether the form in any way required that the covered person or their authorized agent state what is still like what the disclosure redisclosure has been, or if that's something that then gets, when does that get reviewed?
So if I can, Rick Sagel, Office of Legislative Counsel, I think the question is whether the form will allow the covered person to include the information that was not disclosed or that was not removed. Is that correct?
Yeah, do they have to a screenshot or something of what's still out there, or is that not required at that point to assert that this is still happening?
So the statute would not require that, just the name of the data broker and the covered person and at least one element. But the AG could, in the rulemaking, develop that. Ideally, it's what's going to happen here anyway, is the AG makes this form and determines what they think is best to enforce the law.
I understand. Thank you.
Is that at least one, I'm looking at subsection 2, at least one element of the covered person's protected information, is that part of the protected information that has been improperly disclosed, or is that by way of verifying that it is a protected person?
So an earlier draft I had included the covered person and their name or address. And I understand that some of these data brokers, it's the name and something else. It could be a phone number. It could be your email address. It could be another one of those elements that's protected. So it would need to be one of those elements that is being disclosed so they could really just kind of connect the dots and see that they are actually doing this, that they would double check and make sure, is this data broker disclosing this person's name and whatever other element that they're claiming is being disclosed.
So it needs to be an element that has been disclosed.
Right. And if that's not clear, we can address that. I thought it was, but maybe it's not. We can adjust that if necessary. I don't think it's necessary, but I can see how you can read it and you could just put your phone number. I might defer to the AG on what they think would be best to understand and be able to enforce a violation with this form. The whole point of this is to give the AG records and information to be able to go after the data broker if they so wish. So I would defer to them on what they need specifically from the statute to guide them.
So if I recall, though, the AG is going to have the authority to actually make the form. And the way I understand it, the way it's constructed, those are the kind of issues that I think they would, take a look at in terms of what do they need to be able to take action if they so choose. So I'm comfortable, there's a delegation authority to the AG around constructing the form. And I'm kind of comfortable with that. It's at a minimum, and then they can do something more if they want to. But then, I used to represent regulatory agencies. Okay.
Two questions. One, are these, maybe I'm using the wrong term, punitive damages or any damages, are they enforceable on out-of-state data brokers or out-of-country data brokers?
Yes.
I'll come back to you on the second one because it's.
So I don't have a question. I'm just gonna give my synopsis. Is that okay?
Well, why don't we just
Okay.
questions that we have on the bill and then we'll get in general committee discussion after that. Emily?
I have a question on the study. So it says that ADS is gonna be in consultation with the AOA, but down towards the end, it says that the agency shall meet with and receive input from VLCT. I feel like initially we kind of had them in the sort of consulting section as having a little bit more input into the study.
We can require the agencies to consult with each other. We can't require,
To talk to an outside agency that's not
well,
actually
they're not, yeah, the VLCT is,
not an
is-
actual
right, it's
agency.
an association.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Same with the clerks and the treasurers, so we can't compel them.
Okay.
But we can compel the agency to seek them out.
Thank you.
One thing I didn't get to in my walkthrough is the report talked about how we're changing from AOA to ADS, which you saw. Did you see the email about there's a request ADS does not want to be the entity? Okay.
And, yeah,
Okay. Then we have section 5. There was, I think, a lack of clarity that the remedies, previously the word was the remedies provided. I want to make it clear that the private action does not start until January 1st, 2026. You cannot file a suit against a data broker until January 1st, 2026. The AG can do what it wants, but the person has to wait 6 months from July 1st.
So I missed this morning, so I'm catching up. And I just want to understand, there's sort of the two different remedies. There's the AG for the private action. And I see the sort of safe harbors for it, but an individual could decide one way or the other. There's no trigger for one or the other.
Or it could be both. So,
Or someone could, it could be both at the same time. Okay, thank you.
get it now, Tony?
The form.
Yeah.
That the Attorney General uses, now do they have to use that form?
the person, the covered person,
Yes, does that form, yes, do they have to use that form and does the data broker have to accept that form and only that form? In other words, is it like a, I think of like in my world, like a purchase and sale contract for a real estate transaction. We have forms that the Vermont Board of Realtors gives us, but you don't have to use those forms.
Right.
You can use whatever form you want.
right? So yes, to clarify, we now have two kind of forms. The first, I think you're talking about, is the notice that the person gives to the data broker, like stop disclosing my information. That form must be provided by the AG 90 days from July 1st.
Right.
Until that time, the person could send their own notice. But once the AG has come up with that notice form, you must use that form. So if a data broker gets some random scribble on a napkin in 2027, that is not what the AG required, then that would not be proper notice.
Okay.
The form that the AG is going to provide for a covered person in order to, for them to utilize to notify the data broker. I think we wanted a minimum amount of their name, their address, their phone numbers.
So you're talking about the notice form. So we have subdivision A, that no prior verification of a covered person's or authorized agent's status shall be required. But we don't have any requirements as to the name and.
I think we heard that it would be helpful if they provided, their name. I mean, if they just provide their name, John Smith, it's like, how are they gonna know who it is? It would have to be John Smith along with their address. Oh, I got that. Okay, I got it. Or they can find John Smith with a phone number.
Quick note on that. I'm wondering if people are going to this to get their name or taken out, if they will be like, why do I have to put this information in? And if there should be just some sort of little warning, this is the purpose of this information.
So I'm just kind of, this is on the fly here. I'm kind of typing out what you maybe want to see. But let me highlight what I'm doing.
We're giving the Attorney General direction that they will make the form and some minimum requirements that need to be in the form.
Right.
Presumably they would require name and address, but as a legislature, you can say, we really want these things to be, don't forget about this.
And I think at the very, well, in it. If a covered party chooses to do their own form, I think we need to make sure that they're disclosing their name, their address, and their phone number in order for the data broker to know exactly who they are.
Right.
Otherwise, they just send their name, and they happens to be a common name. And then they go after the data broker for not taking it down, and they say, we don't know who you are. We don't know,
Here we go. So sorry, I'm going back to this 90-day window.
Yeah.
It provided that until such form is published, covered persons and their authorized agents may use their own form of written notice that references a section, identifies the sender as a covered person or an authorized agent. So you could be a bit more descriptive there.
Well, I think so. I mean, I think you want to make sure that the data broker knows exactly who, they don't want to be redacting somebody else. And they also, if they want to comply, don't know how they could comply. And so I think we want to do as much as we can to assist the data brokers in complying and to assist the covered person from getting their data redacted. Right.
I just I am totally on board with yes, trying to like hone in on that. I'd suggest name and like one piece of identifying information, because there's some data brokers that just do like phone numbers or just do addresses. So maybe like their name and at least one protected whatever it is, protected information category or something.
Hopefully. But so if the data broker only uses telephone numbers, but they use one and they use their name and their address, how will that data broker know who they're talking about? John?
Thanks much. I was wondering if given the penalties that are being articulated, either with the PRA and the civil, if the common name situation that you articulate, Mr. Chairman, if the simplest thing for data brokers to do then is to just say, well, every single John Smith in Vermont, we don't want to get it wrong. And I don't think that necessarily would be seen as an unwelcome development around the table in the committee, but I do think that that's probably the simplest thing with common names, is just get them all at once and live with it. That seems the likeliest outcome. I'm not sure if others feel differently about it, but if there's lots and lots of these and there's fairly common names, I imagine that's probably what's going to happen. Because I don't think we've heard from have we heard from anybody who would give us testimony to that effect or not?
Of what the data broker would do?
Yeah.
No, I don't think we've heard from any data brokers.
Okay.
Without providing direction to the covered person of what information they need to provide, Yeah, that's a possibility. But I think that's what we're trying, I think attempting to do here is to make sure that the right person gets their data redacted. And so the only way to do that is for them to provide their name, address, telephone number so that in one way or another, they can get matched.
So one way to approach that, might make, the provision on page 8, in terms of the formal notice, and I think it says, covered person, name, I guess, and at least one element of that covered person's protected information. You could sort of use that contract for what the covered person would need to send in before January 26th. Because
Yeah, but I think it's more than one element,
that could be.
right?
That could be.
I mean, if we have data brokers that are only using telephone numbers, we have data brokers that are only using addresses. Nobody knows how to match those up.
The form could say something like name, and the more information you give us, the more likely the data brokers will be able to match you up to block your information, right? So then it's the individual who's saying, well, I'm going to put in my address, my phone number, my email, because if I'm sending that to a data broker and I'm not sure which of those pieces of information they have. Does that make sense?
I think also onto Abby's point, giving them the sort of option of, well, maybe it's not the option of like what they want redacted, but I think that they should probably have some clarity around the information that they don't want out there too. Because it might not be all of it.
Would it be going too far to say that, they provide in the notice before January 26th, they provide notice of, the name and just sort of functionally information necessary for the data broker to get in touch with them, so.
Just wait until the form is ready.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something to consider. Let the experts create the form and then they can adjust it.
Just on that note of the form, I think we need to be very cautious about only it's like saying name and one other identifiable information because we don't know what a data broker has. And you're setting them up for a frivolous lawsuit because if someone says, here's my name, here's my address, and this data broker only has their name and phone number, now that lawyer can go in and say, you're not in compliance, you're getting sued. Or the other option, like Mr. Cooper said, they just say, okay, if you're John Smith, you're the end. Now I'm going to try and conduct a business transaction. I happen to be a John Smith that doesn't care. And now I can't conduct my transaction. And I'm like, what's going on? Why am I not able to? And now I'm out with trouble that I didn't ask for.
I think, but we're only like this information. So if a person submits a form and they say, here's my name and my phone number, or my name and my address, that's the information they're requesting to be redacted, right? It's not saying that like, if you find a record, then like they have to say, I want my name, phone number, address, that kind of stuff. It's on the burden of like asking for the information is for this protected information is on them. I think that would make sense for rulemaking for the AG to like explain. But like if they say I want my name and phone number redacted, but they don't say I want my address redacted, the address might still be out there because they didn't, and the data broker shouldn't be able to be sued for that because the proof, like they would have proof in a form or email of the information that the person actually did request to be redacted. So they shouldn't be held responsible for, I'm assuming that would be like,
That makes sense.
yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you're only sending notices to data brokers who have your information, right? So I think you can certainly give people the right, like you have here, to do it before you have a form, but you can also limit it to just once the form is ready.
My question based on what Monique said is, do we need to modify number 4 on the screen to be more clear?
And I'm just, you know, this is maybe not gonna be here, but what would you want it to say?
Requests which information the data broker ceases disclosing, which covered information, which protected information, however.
So
Specific protected information?
And that means that you're not just gonna take any John Smith and
Mhm.
delete all of them. You're gonna do the John Smith with the 888-123-4567 phone number, because that's who requested that number be redacted.
Okay. Now, this is just for the written notice. This is just for the not informal. This is for the notice before the AG has produced it. So do you also want this to be in the AG form? Okay. While I'm here, can we decide about the 90-day thing? I need to work on this. So either I work on this or I remove the ability to have a person come up with their own form.
I would be concerned about coming up with their own form for the same reasons that when they start in January, they have to use the AG's form. Well, now an attorney could go and say, you didn't use the right form. You're getting sued.
It's within a period.
Well, yeah, but after the period,
No, but that's the thing, like, if that form is signed and dated, then that follows within a period of time, so I don't know if that should be, would that be valid?
we see this is my thing is, you know, you fill out this form that isn't a standard form.
Mhm.
And now all of a sudden in January, this form becomes official. Well, what's to stop that attorney from going after them and saying, you didn't use the right form?
Because it was not available, and I have a signed and dated form I created myself. And it fell between the time period, and it's signed and it's dated. And that date is what matters. Sorry.
No, I'm not arguing. I was just asking a question.
Sorry, I'm not. Sorry, I'm mentally working things out.
You're good.
So the form will be published 90 days from July 1st, which what is that, September 1st? Is that right? So by September 1st, there should be a form that cover persons can use to send to data brokers. And right now, they could use their own form of notice that has to do 1, 2, 3, whatever we come up with. And you know, if that form is received by the data broker and provides what we tell them it needs to provide, then that would be sufficient notice. And starting on January 1st, a person could sue if their information was still out there by that data broker that received notice.
After the 90 days, are they required to use that form?
Yes. It's so up here. The notice shall be in a form and manner provided by the AG.
Would that person have to refill out the?
No. Because we're giving them this 90-day window.
for 3, the one that we were just working on.
Yeah.
For down further, nope, where the requirements, the specified information piece.
Oh, so that was,
No,
that's down in the session
Yeah,
law,
I
90-day,
was-
yes.
I was just, so since we added number 4, the request specific
Right.
protected, can 3 be provides the name and specific protected information being requested to be redacted or something?
Yeah.
Or non-disclosed or
Yeah,
whatever
that's
the
the way the language is always difficult.
to cease being disclosed, requested to be ceased.
To be veiled,
To be what?
to be veiled.
Yeah. We have to define veil.
If I write the word disclose again, I might literally lose my mind. And the way it's like,
Disclose that.
it's like cease disclosing. I hate lawyers as much as you guys hate lawyers, so. Okay. On the record.
Poor Rick in the morning, he's like,
Yeah, I've seen these words a lot recently. Let me, I'm thinking about this. Let me figure out a way to word this, but again, do you want to keep the 90-day thing? Can we? Yes, okay, it's gonna be kept. All right. So I will figure out a way to word this. I'm gonna highlight this to indicate, I'm gonna come back to it. And this needs to be worked on, edit this, but I know what you want to do. So we need to probably have that same language up here, right? That in the form that the AG provides.
Yeah.
That and specific protected information. Could be whatever, yeah. Does that address, once I come up with the right words, the idea that you want the form to require the cover person to put their full name and their specific protected information that needs to be removed? Okay. Anything else? Can you give me 5-10 minutes to work the language not on camera?
Can you go offline?